supposed to pass into the Strip through Rafah. Egypt says the Rafah crossing has been bombed 4 times, which means the only road to Gaza is damaged and needs repair. Egyptian diggers are already repairing that road. Hundreds of aid lorries are waiting outside. The moment it's done, they will enter Gaza. But even with the aid, there's a problem. Israel says it will only agree to allow food, water and medicines to pass through. What Gaza needs is also fuel. It needs this fuel to power hospitals, but it may not come anytime soon. Also, only 20 trucks will be allowed to pass in the first round. That's because of Israel's concerns. They want to ensure that the supplies do not reach Hamas. They want the United Nations to check them. And what does the UN say? It says 20 trucks of aid won't do. More should be allowed.
So these trucks are not just trucks. They are a lifeline. They are the difference between life and death for so many people in Gaza. And to see them stuck here makes me be very clear. What we need is to make them move. To make them move to the other side of this wall. To make them move as quickly as possible and as many as possible.
Either way, aid remains the priority right now, and it must reach the Strip soon. Time is running out as a humanitarian catastrophe looms. And it seems the world is watching helplessly. As all this tragedy unfolds, we ask, what are world leaders doing? Since the October 7th attack, you've seen a flurry of activity, leaders making calls, flying all over the world, Western leaders going to Israel, one after the other. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and of course US President Joe Biden, all of them went to Israel and met with Netanyahu. Next in line is the French President. Reports say Emmanuel Macron too plans to go to Israel. It's a diplomatic carnival. But what has it achieved? It's all well and good to show solidarity, but what about actual solutions? Biden returned to the US after a trip that had to be cut short. Initially, he was supposed to meet both Netanyahu and Arab leaders, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and Jordan's King Abdullah II. But he couldn't. All of these meetings were called off.
In the face of this tragedy that occurred tonight, and in order to protect our people, I have decided to cut short my visit and return to my homeland to be among my people in this great ordeal. I have also agreed with our brothers in Jordan and Egypt to cancel the scheduled summit in Amman today with US President Joe Biden. Numerous international decisions have been taken to protect our people, but they have not been implemented because America does not want to enforce them.
Abbas was talking about the blast at the Al-Ahli hospital in Gaza. That attack scuppered any chances of talks. No Arab leader would be caught dead talking to Biden after that. So the US president had to go home. And he made it worse by the clumsy statements that he made last night. Listen to this.
Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering greatly because of them. Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. American leadership is what holds the world together. That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine.
Biden compared what's happening in Israel to Russia and Ukraine. This was his way of asking for about $100 billion from the US Congress. $100 billion for security, he says. But let's look at what's actually going to happen. That colossal amount, if he gets it, is going to be spent on war machines. The US is going to keep villainizing Russia, refusing to work with Moscow even for common interests, like protecting the Palestinians. All this money is going to go into conflict, not peace, not diplomacy, but in weapons. So what has Biden's trip to Israel really achieved? Not de-escalation, not diffusing the threat of a wider conflict, not even aid yet. And now the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying his luck. He's meeting the Egyptian president today, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. This is to figure out a way to get aid going from Egypt into Gaza. Biden said that he held talks about that and that aid delivery was supposed to start today. But perhaps Sunak needs to give it one more push. Now, we'd like to believe that it's all a noble effort, but honestly, it also reeks of opportunism. Our Western leaders playing to domestic galleries, pretending to be strongmen on the front lines, but unable to deliver more than a few trucks full of food. They'll spend public funds on arms packages, but they won't sit at the table to find a long-term solution, like with the United Nations yesterday. Where is the room for diplomacy? We are steadily heading back to a world of might makes right. Vantage continues after a short break.
Invading Russian forces off their land and the air defense system to shoot down Russian missiles before they destroy Ukrainian cities. Let me be clear about something. We send Ukrainian equipment sitting in our stockpiles. And when we use the money allocated by Congress, we use it to replenish our own stores, our own stockpiles, with new equipment. Equipment that defends America and is made in America. Patriot missiles for air defense batteries, made in Arizona. Artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and so much more. You know, just as in World War II, today patriotic American workers are building the arsenal of democracy and serving the cause of freedom. Let me close with this. Earlier this year, I boarded Air Force One for a secret flight to Poland. There I boarded a train with blacked out windows for a 10-hour ride each way to Kyiv, to stand with the people of Ukraine ahead of the one-year anniversary of their brave fight against Putin. I'm told I was the first American to enter a war zone not controlled by the United States military since President Lincoln. With me was just a small group of security personnel and a few advisors. But when I exited that train and met Zelensky, President Zelensky, I didn't feel alone. I was bringing with me the idea of America, the promise of America, to the people who are today fighting for the same things we fought for 250 years ago: freedom, independence, self-determination. And as I walked through Kyiv with President Zelensky,
So aid may not be reaching Gaza yet, but arms have already reached Israel. Tells you what the priority is. And this is not just about the Israel-Hamas war. It happens with every war. The moment a conflict breaks out, arms sales shoot up. And this time is no different. Last year, arms sales reached an all-time high with the Ukraine war, and this year we're looking at even bigger numbers. If there is any business that is booming during this war, it is the sale of weapons, and the biggest beneficiaries are the US defense suppliers. Here's a report.
Who benefits from a war? It sounds like a paradox. How can someone benefit from a war? There's killing, there's suffering, there's widespread destruction. And who would benefit from that? Well, someone does. And that someone is the defense industry. Wars can lead to an increase in defense spending. The more prolonged and intense the conflict, the greater the demand. A government that's fighting a war will obviously spend more money, so nations invest heavily in technology, in weaponry, and in infrastructure. This heightened demand helps defense companies across the globe, meaning that their profits soar. Last year, worldwide military spending hit $2.1 trillion. That's over 2% of the world's GDP. Europe has ramped up military spending. It's the highest the continent is spending since the Cold War. Asian nations have also bumped up spending. The defense budgets of Japan and Korea grew by 7% in 2022. India's defense budget was $81.4 billion in 2022, a rise of 6% from 2021. One of the biggest drivers for these numbers is the purchase of new weapons systems. As of last year, the US controls 45% of the world's weapons exports. That's 5 times more than any other nation, and it's also gone up over 30% since 2010. So for US defense suppliers, it's profit, profit, and more profit. I'm talking about the likes of Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Lockheed Martin. Their sales are soaring, their companies are growing, and their stocks are rallying. Plus, the purchase of American weapons requires close coordination, that too with the US military. Any military contract is long-term. It continues for years, and it includes upgrades that continue to benefit the industry. But it's not just the US that is benefiting. You see, US weaponry is in demand, so their suppliers have a long wait time. But for countries that want weapons fast, that's not a good option. So the urgent demand of military firepower is encouraging other arms-producing nations, the likes of Turkey and South Korea. Last year, Poland reached a $14 billion agreement with South Korea. It plans to buy tanks, fighter jets, and howitzers. Turkey, too, is revolutionizing the drone warfare industry. Countries are lining up to buy armed drones made by Baykar. Turkey has sold drones to at least 29 nations, and they've been used in war zones in Libya, Syria, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Azerbaijan. So basically, it's all about seizing the opportunity, and Ankara and Seoul are cashing in. They are increasing exports and giving purchasers across the globe more options. Currently, there are 2 major wars raging on, one at Europe's borders and the other in West Asia. So the surge in weapons purchases will only increase with time, and this is causing a lot of concern. Plus, more arms sales means there's potential for conflicts to become more likely and more deadly. And there's only one industry that will continue to benefit from it. This is one of the harshest realities of conflict. For some people, wars cost lives, and for others, they drive value.
Israel is fighting 2 wars right now. The first one, of course, is against Hamas. The second one is against the media, an information war. It has accused some news organizations of broadcasting propaganda and passing sensitive information to Israel's enemies. These claims have not been proven yet. Regardless, Israel wants to stay ahead of the curve. It has approved new regulations. They allow foreign news channels in Israel to be shut down temporarily during states of emergency. And that's not all. Israel has turned its soldiers into social media influencers. They're on the front lines, posting content on X, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, and driving public perception in this war. Our next report tells you more.
Islamic Jihad bombed a hospital in Gaza. The whole world immediately assumed it was an Israeli strike. No fact-checking, no making sure, no filtering information. Hamas set up a trap, and the international media fell for it. Instead of verifying the information, the media keeps publishing fake news.
What you just saw is a video posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, by the Israel Defense Forces. It shows a member of the Israeli army talking about the explosion and fire at the Al Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza this week, claiming that the media organizations reported on the incident without fact-checking or filtering information. Here's what the video got right. Some news organizations did get facts wrong. They did blame Israel for the attack without proof. Like the New York Times, it now avoids Israeli involvement. The platform drew online flack over its bias. And hell had no fury like the IDF scorned. So now it's taking matters into its own hands. Since the war began, Israel has wanted to shut down offices of Qatari news company Al Jazeera, claiming that it broadcasts propaganda and passes sensitive information to Israel's enemies. None of these claims have been proven yet. But Israel has passed new regulations that could close Al Jazeera's doors in the nation. The regulations allow foreign news channels in Israel to be shut down temporarily during a state of emergency like this one. It's clear that Israel is serious about this misinformation war. It's staying on top of media matters that shape public opinion. This tactic is almost as old as war itself. Governments have often used media or social media to win the information war. We've seen it in the war in Ukraine as well, where fake social media accounts, forged documents, and manipulated videos have flooded the internet. That's because media has the power to alter the perception, if not the path, of wars. The Vietnam War was described as the first television war. Thanks to TV, everyone had an opinion on the war. In fact, one of its many myths is that the war was lost by hostile American press coverage. In 1968, one of the most trustworthy news voices at the time, CBS anchor Walter Cronkite, told his audience that the war could not be won. His judgment resonated with millions, even with the then president Lyndon Johnson. A few weeks later, he announced that he would not seek re-election. It was a news coverage, the opinion of an anchor, that greatly contributed to shifting public opinion about a war. And now, Israel is using social media to present its side in this war. We showed you this video. It doesn't just blame the media, but blames the hospital explosion on the Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Islamic Jihad bombed a hospital in Gaza.
That hasn't been conclusively proven, but this IDF video tries to sway public perception in Israel's favor. And this isn't an isolated case. Across social media channels, the IDF has been posting similar content, with military officers turning into influencers. They bust fake news, or so they claim. They draw a personal connect to drive home a message.
I am speaking to you as an Arab woman to Arab people, as an Arab Israeli officer in the IDF.
They even get creative. Since the war began, Israel has run about 30 ads to frame its narrative. And they have been viewed over 4 million times on X. The point is, wars are now fought not just on the battlefield, but also on the airwaves. The choice of language, images, and headlines all matter. As the fog of war covers the media landscape, the onus is on the messenger to not mislead.
We're shifting away from the war now. Let's pick up on the India-Canada diplomatic row. I know it seems like a long time ago. Wars can do that to you. So tonight we decided to bring you the latest. Canada is pulling out its diplomats, around 41 of them. It was a demand from the Indian side. New Delhi said Canada's diplomatic presence was too big. They had around 60 officials in India. That's around 3 times higher than India's presence in Canada. So New Delhi said, we want parity. It asked Canada to withdraw 41 diplomats from India, and reports say the demand came with a warning. Pull out your diplomats or lose your diplomatic immunity. It's taken some time, but Ottawa says that they've decided to comply, not without criticism though. Canada's foreign minister has lashed out at India. She says the decision by India was unilateral. She also said it violates international law. Listen in.
A unilateral revocation of diplomatic privileges and immunities is contrary to international law. It is a clear violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And threatening to do so is unreasonable and escalatory.
So does it? Does it violate the convention? India says no. The Ministry of External Affairs has responded to Canada's charge. Let me quote from what they said. The much higher number of Canadian diplomats in India and their continued interference in our internal affairs warrant a parity in mutual diplomatic presence in New Delhi and Ottawa. Our actions in implementing this parity are fully consistent with Article 11.1 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. That is what New Delhi says. And what does this article say? That countries can decide how big a foreign mission should be, unless, of course, there is some agreement or deal. So India says the decision is perfectly legal. But here's how it will impact the people. Visa services will slow down. In-person services have been paused in Chandigarh, Mumbai and Bangalore. That's where Canada has consulates in India, or had consulates. If you need help, you must visit the High Commission in New Delhi or the third-party centers. We could be looking at a huge backlog here. Reports say up to 17,500 applications could be affected by December, so plan accordingly. Canada too will be affected by all of this. Indians make up the largest chunk of students and permanent residents in Canada. They bring in a lot of money. So this decision will hurt both sides. Now, I know we haven't covered this story in a long time, but that does not mean that things have cooled down. In fact, Justin Trudeau has been busy behind the scenes. On October 8th, he dialed the UAE president and the Jordanian king. This was hours after the Hamas attack on Israel. And what did Trudeau discuss? Among other things, India. He spoke to the UAE and Jordan about India's role in Hardeep Nijjar's killing. Talk about a diplomatic masterstroke. The entire region was plunging into war, and Trudeau thought now is the time to talk about India. Such blunders are backfiring on him. A new poll says most Canadians want him out, around 57% to be precise. They want him to step down. They're asking Justin Trudeau to go. And it's not just because of India. Trudeau's tenure has been far from impressive. Interest rates are at a 22-year high. There's a crisis in the housing market. And what does Justin Trudeau do? Pick a fight with the fifth largest economy in the world, and that too without proof. Because remember, it's been a month since Trudeau accused India of murder. Still, there is no evidence. His best bet was rallying Canada's allies in the West. But looking at the current global situation, that's tough. Just think about it. A full-blown West Asian war on one side and the case of a separatist's murder on the other. Which one will world leaders address first? Obviously, the war. Nonetheless, Canada is not giving up. Their foreign minister statements indicate that. She was very combative today. But India seems to have moved on. Yesterday, the Foreign Ministry of India held its weekly press briefing. Palestine was discussed. China was discussed. So was the Maldives and Qatar. But guess what was not? Canada. Now, India's tough policies extend to Russia as well. We've been buying a lot of Russian oil since the last year. Paying for them has become a challenge now. Let me explain. Russia wants India to pay in the yuan, the Chinese currency. But New Delhi has a policy against that. The Finance Ministry of India has cautioned against using the yuan. Despite that, some transactions were made. Even state-owned Indian Oil paid Russia in the yuan. But not anymore. The government has put its foot down. It has reportedly told refiners, don't pay in Chinese currency. Not all refiners, though. Only the state-owned ones have been told this. The private refiners are free to make their choice. The government will neither stop them nor help them. Now, to give you some context, around 70% of India's refiners are state-owned. So a government diktat is crucial. Let's break down what this issue is all about. We're looking at 5 questions here. Number 1, how does India usually pay Russia? It's a cocktail of currencies. Some UAE dirhams, some US dollars, and some Indian rupees. The idea here is to sidestep the G7 cap. The G7 allows Russian oil purchases up to $60, meaning $60 per barrel. That's what you can pay. But what's the rate right now? More than $80. So the difference is paid in other currencies, like rupees and dirhams. Just one problem, though. Russia has too many Indian rupees with it, billions of rupees that Moscow cannot use. Which brings us to question number 2. Why does Russia want the yuan? Because they use a lot of it. Russia's imports from China are up 12.8%. They're worth around $76 billion. So having more yuan helps Russia. They can use it to buy goods from China. In fact, the yuan is now the most traded currency in Russia. It beat the US dollar this year. Question number 3. Why is India resisting the yuan? Well, the reason is obvious. India and China are engaged in a border standoff. Beijing is claiming land that belongs to New Delhi. In August this year, they released a new map. It claimed the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. So why should India use the yuan? Why should India help internationalize the Chinese currency? That seems to be the government's argument. Now, question number 4. How will this affect India's oil trade? Well, so far the supply is fine, but reports say around 7 cargoes have been delayed. They cannot decide on the payment. If such issues persist, it could be a worry. And I'll tell you why. Russia is now India's largest oil supplier. Our total oil bill is around $11 billion. And out of this, $4 billion is from Russia. So a solution has to be found. And one option is diversification. Or in this case, going back to the old status quo. India's petroleum minister spoke about this. Let me quote from what he said. Our dependence on Russian oil is going to decrease sharply. The cost viability from the Gulf is much more attractive now. Now, just to clarify, this statement was made last month before the war between Israel and Hamas. Nonetheless, you get the thought process. You cannot depend on one source for 50% of your oil, even if it's a friend like Russia. And finally, question number 5. What does China make of this decision? Well, Beijing has not reacted officially, but their faithful state media has. This is what they've said. The Indian government's decision is an ill-advised move, as it will push up costs and hamper normal operations. What a surprise. China thinks India is wrong. Of course they do. Beijing would love for India to start using the yuan. We are talking about one of the biggest importers in the world. Our total import bill, India's total import bill, is close to $900 billion. So if India uses the yuan, it's a boost for China, which is why the government is pushing back. But simply shunning the yuan is not enough. It's important to address the root problem here. Why does Russia want the yuan, but not the rupee? Because there is not much to buy from India. If India wants to internationalize the rupee, that must change. India will have to drastically improve its exports. Only then will the rupee become desirable. Vantage continues after a short break.
Sirens sounding in the distance. I felt something I've always believed, more strongly than ever before. America is a beacon to the world. Still. Where, as my friend Madeleine Albright said, the indispensable nation. Tonight there are innocent people all over the world who hope because of us, who believe in a better life because of us, who are desperate not to be forgotten by us, and who are waiting for us. But time is of the essence. I know we have our divisions at home. We have to get past them. We can't let petty, partisan, angry politics get in the way of our responsibilities as a great nation. We cannot and will not let terrorists like Hamas and tyrants like Putin win. I refuse to let that happen. In moments like these, we have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. The United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. My fellow Americans, thank you for your time. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Good evening, my fellow Americans. We're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come. That's what I'd like to talk with you about tonight. You know, earlier this morning I returned from Israel. They tell me I'm the first American president to travel there during the war. I met with the Prime Minister and members of his cabinet. And most movingly, I met with Israelis who had personally lived through horrific horror of the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. More than 1,300 people slaughtered in Israel, including at least 32 American citizens. Scores of innocents, from infants to the elderly grandparents. Israelis, Americans taken hostage. As I told the families of Americans being held captive by Hamas, we're pursuing every avenue to bring their loved ones home. As president, there is no higher priority for me than the safety of Americans held hostage. The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others. In Israel, I saw people who are strong, determined, resilient, and also angry, in shock and in deep, deep pain. I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, and reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination. The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away. Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape used as a weapon by the Russians, and thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents.
Now let's turn our attention to China, where the Belt and Road Forum is taking place. It's a gala that keeps getting less glorious with each edition. About 145 countries have taken part in China's Belt and Road Initiative. But not too many top leaders showed up for this third edition of the forum, despite it being a landmark for the BRI. It has hit the 10-year mark. 10 years of China investing in other countries, or rather 10 years of China making them rack up their debt. China in general, and the Belt and Road Initiative in particular, is known as a debt trap. Country after country has been left at the mercy of Beijing's bankers. Some nations have managed to keep their heads above water, and some, like Sri Lanka, have had a full-blown financial meltdown. In fact, Sri Lanka's situation is the perfect case study. It built expensive projects it did not need, with money it did not have. The Hambantota Port or the Lotus Tower in Colombo are perfect examples of white elephants. Very pretty to look at, but essentially nothing special. What's worse, they're extremely expensive to maintain. So more a curse than a gift, which is why they're called white elephants. And that's the Belt and Road Initiative in a nutshell for you. Beijing touts it as the world's most ambitious trade project, but the debt it generates has brought many a government to their knees. Now, all of this is well known, and yet, absurdly, the bent and broken nations do not seem to care. Look at Sri Lanka.
In particular, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a negative impact on the economy of every country. At the same time, we also face the challenges brought by climate change, and it is a must to develop green economy. There is also the debt pressure on low and middle income countries such as Sri Lanka, which is undergoing a debt crisis. Many other countries have debt problems too. In the face of new difficulties and major global challenges, we hope to find solutions by participating in international cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative.
That's what Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe said a few days ago. He blamed the pandemic and climate change. But he was all praises for the BRI, insisting that it had brought benefits.
The Belt and Road Initiative proposed by China has sparked discussions. For example, the Hambantota International Port project in Sri Lanka has provoked criticism. However, we are very satisfied with the current cooperation and we will continue to advance relevant projects.
Why the effusive praise? Could it have something to do with this? Just days before the forum, China agreed to restructure Sri Lanka's debt. Beijing is Colombo's biggest creditor. It held out on restructuring for months after Sri Lanka's meltdown, and finally it agreed only in time for this forum. Restructuring $4.2 billion is a lot, probably enough to have a gracious government sing your praises at a critical time. And then there's Pakistan, China's iron brother, made rusty and brittle because of its mountain of debt. But Pakistan's interim government also had nothing but good things to say about the BRI.
We are amongst the first supporters of BRI by launching its flagship project of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor in 2013. I feel happy to share that in Pakistan, we have completed nearly 50 projects worth $25 billion under CPAC.
He said 50 projects worth $25 billion had been completed. This is over the last 10 years. And look at the result. Pakistan has about $124 billion worth of external debt. Its biggest creditor is, of course, China. Islamabad spent about $20.8 billion servicing its debt in the last financial year. Almost $21 billion of debt. $4.4 billion was just interest. Now, just avoiding their interest payments would have made Pakistan $25 billion richer in about 5 years, half the BRI's timeline. Of course, in interest amounts change and debt accrues. We understand it's not that simple, but the question remains, why would you keep going back to your loan shark?
Excellency, I would take this opportunity to congratulate you on the resounding success of the BRF, testifying to validity of your vision of the Belt and Road Initiative. Your speech yesterday at the opening ceremony was profound, deep, visionary, and it offered a lot of opportunity for the countries like Pakistan. So it is the moment for Pakistan to come and seize it. And we will take that message back home of your inspiration and your leadership. We were the first and foremost to be trusted, and we are the one who trust you utmost.
They're all smiles, but it's a vicious cycle. Pakistan needs new loans to pay off its old ones. China is one of the only nations willing to lend more money to Pakistan at worse rates, of course. So the Pakistani officials will go to Beijing to bend the knee. They will agree to China's every demand, like the latest one, where Beijing insists on security for its citizens. The Chinese citizens working on the BRI, Beijing wants assurances of their safety. Islamabad has said it will spare no effort to ensure that, which of course it should. But more than that, Pakistan also needs to get out of this crippling partnership, because sooner or later the chickens will come home to roost. Right now, Pakistan is busy elsewhere to welcome their convicted, self-exiled former Prime Minister. I'm talking about Nawaz Sharif. He's due to return home tomorrow. He's Pakistan's three-time Prime Minister. He's been on self-imposed exile for 4 years, but now he's homeward bound. Pakistani courts smoothened the path for Sharif's return. He won't be arrested when he lands. He's been granted protection from the courts. Now, this is a major boost for Sharif and his party, the PMLN, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. They're heading into a crucial election, and they once again seem to have the army's support. Here's a report.
Pakistan is all set for Nawaz Sharif's homecoming. The three-time Prime Minister of Pakistan will return home tomorrow. His party, the Pakistan Muslim League, is preparing for a grand homecoming. Pakistani courts have also smoothened the path for Sharif. They have passed a protective bail order. Authorities are barred from arresting Sharif upon his return, but only till he appears in court on the 24th of October. Why would he get arrested upon return? Here's why. In 2016, millions of documents from a Panama law firm were leaked to the media. It came to be known as the Panama Papers scandal. It made waves the world over. It revealed a web of corruption, showing offshore accounts of prominent individuals across the globe. One of them was Nawaz Sharif. He was found guilty of corruption. He was removed from the office of Prime Minister. In 2018, the Pakistan Supreme Court imposed a lifetime ban on Sharif. He was barred from taking part in politics or holding any public office. This was a first-of-its-kind decision in Pakistan. He was also sentenced to 10 years in prison. But in 2019, local courts allowed him to leave the country to receive supposed medical treatment. Once Sharif left, he didn't return. He went on a self-imposed exile in London, which has continued for almost 4 years now. But now he wants to come back in the game. Pakistan is going to elections next year. The Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz says that Sharif will lead their party's election campaign. After all, he knows how the machinery works. He has been elected PM thrice, even though his government has never completed any of its terms. But his party's faith in him is steadfast. Question is, what about the public? Pakistani politics is suffering from a gaping hole of leadership. Sharif's main rival is another former Pak PM, Imran Khan. But he is in jail. Khan has also been banned by a Pakistani court. He can't contest elections for the next 5 years in a graft case. Amid this political musical chairs, Pakistan is crumbling. Its economy is crippled. Inflation is rampant, with prices of fuel and gas surging. Terror attacks and bomb blasts are frequent. The public is reeling under political uncertainty.
Pakistan's future suffered a setback the day Imran Khan's government was toppled. In fact, any government, whether Imran Khan's or Nawaz Sharif's of the Pakistan People's Party or any other party, it is imperative that they complete their 5-year term. For this, all institutions, even the establishment, have to agree to be on one page if Pakistan is to move forward.
In Pakistan, the more things change, the more they look the same. While Sharif returns to Pakistan and his party hopes for a home run. But the Lion of Punjab, as he's called in Pakistan, faces a tall order to rehabilitate himself, to revive his party, and to stabilize his country.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Spain, heavy rains halt trains and cause disruptions on subway lines in Madrid. The Sydney Opera House celebrates its 50th birthday with a dazzling laser show, and marigolds paint Mexico in orange to kick off the Day of the Dead season. We're also taking you back in history. On this day in 2011, Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi was killed in his hometown. Gaddafi ruled Libya with an iron fist for over 4 decades. In 2011, his convoy was trying to escape westwards when they were attacked. He was captured by Libya's transition government forces and killed shortly after. We leave you on that note. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.
Welcome, you're watching Breaking on CNN News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's dive into this segment with some breaking inputs coming in. As far as BJP's CEC meet is concerned, we are learning that top BJP sources have told CNN News 18 that party has finalized 92 out of 94 candidates for the upcoming Madhya Pradesh election. Remember, Madhya Pradesh is headed into assembly election on November 17, and party is likely to bring out a list of candidates in the next couple of days. Also, we are learning that the CEC for Rajasthan is also over, but the Telangana CEC of the BJP is currently underway. An important, crucial day for BJP strategizing as far as the upcoming assembly polls of Rajasthan, Telangana and Madhya Pradesh are concerned. For more details, let's quickly go across to our correspondent Payal, who's joining us live from outside the BJP office. Payal,